today to talk about the books that I read in February. February is the month that I do my annual reading challenge in which I try to read one book a day. I will let you know towards the end of the video whether I was successful, otherwise you can add up the books that I'm talking about and figure it out for yourself. I thought February was quite a challenging month, so not only are things going a bit wild in the real world, I don't really want to talk about it much further because we're already depressed enough. I was trying to do my book a day challenge, but also in my professional work life, things were not as expected. I feel like I'm always complaining about work being really super busy, but really at the moment it just feels like it's one thing after another and it's so tiring. So that was getting to me. Halfway through the month, I went to the doctor. I needed to go to the doctor for something, and I received a diagnosis that I didn't agree with. I was very surprised, but I went along with it, and then several days later I got new symptoms. And so I went back to the doctor, a different one this time, and this second GP told me they don't know why the first GP diagnosed me with this thing, because it's 100% clearly not that thing. To which I was kind of like, well, I don't know, it's your direct colleague, you work with this person. You're meant to be the two doctors here. I've got no clue. I'm just here because I need you to tell me what's going on. I then was sent back to the first GP and they diagnosed me with something else. They said I definitely had the first thing, but that's gone now. And now I have the second thing. And at that point, I just really didn't trust what they were saying. So that really stressed me out in the middle of the month and I didn't have a good time. I'm all better now, I think, as far as I'm aware. My symptoms are gone. I'm feeling much more alive. Because I was feeling some like serious fatigue in the middle of the month, but I think that was mainly down to stress. So I'm feeling better, but there was really a couple of weeks there in February, considering it's only 4 weeks long as well. The majority of February I spent stressing about that. So that's just an update on how things are going for me. I think we're on a positive trajectory now. So anyway, let's just talk about the books because I don't know if you want to know about all of my medical history and stuff. So yeah, you've probably skipped past this point anyway. I'm going to split this video into novels and graphic novels because I don't know how invested or interested in graphic novels you all are. So I'll split it, I'll put timestamps below and you can skip to whichever place you want to. Okay, so starting off with the novels that I read, I decided on a whim to pick up Flawless by Elsie Silver. This one was at the library and I just saw it lying there, so I picked it up. I've heard really good things about it. This is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series, and as far as I can tell, each book in the series, like a classic romance series, focuses on a new character or side character who is introduced in the previous books. So this one is the first one in the series. It follows a woman whose name I can't remember. This is a really bad start. I'm so sorry, guys. I do this every time. Okay, so the main character is called Summer. The guy is called Rhett. So Summer is working for her dad's agency firm and her father manages this guy called Rhett, who is basically a bull rider cowboy sort of thing. They live in Canada. Rhett, at the beginning of the book, has a sponsorship from a milk company and he is caught on camera saying that he hates milk. Which I think is fair, I completely understand that. But obviously that's a big no-no, so sponsorships start like drying up, dropping out. And so Summer is asked by her father to get involved to try and help Rhett kind of stay on the straight and narrow, not insult anyone else and just get through the next few weeks. So she goes to stay with Rhett in his family farmhouse, and then you meet all of Rhett's siblings and his father as well, who I love, by the way. I've got such a crush on Rhett's dad. Both Rhett and Summer are kind of going through their own family stuff. So Summer has a bit of a messy home life in that her father had an affair with Summer's mother while the father was married, and he stayed married to his original wife. So Summer has always been kind of like the other daughter and hasn't been welcomed into the family home. And she has a sister as well, who she has a very complex relationship with because she does view her as her sister, but they've never been super close or anything. That's partly because of her stepmother. So it's a bit of a messy, complex family relationship that she's got going on. And then Rhett has like a million siblings who I think will feature in the other books in this series, and they've all got their own stuff going on. So I actually really loved this one. I was really pleasantly surprised. So if you've been here for a while, you probably know that I am not a massive romance reader. I am so picky with my romances just because I feel like I have watched so many TV shows and read so many books that if an author doesn't do chemistry properly or the way that I like it, it just doesn't win me over anymore. I was gonna make a joke about being just as picky in real life as well. So I was shocked when I found myself loving this one, and not only that, I was really enjoying the spice scenes, which never happens. I normally just get bored during them because a lot of them are just all the same, but there is one particular scene in the hotel room in this one where the main character is taking a phone call. That's all I will say. I don't want to spoil anything, but that I thought was a fairly unique way of writing spice, and I just thought Elsie Silver did a great job. So yeah, I love this one. I'm really surprised. I'm considering buying this series because they are available in the works for £2.50 each, and that is perfect. But I think I probably want to read this second book first and see if I want to get my hands on the rest of them, because this one's from the library, so I do need to give it back soon. I just need to do a recap on my website first, I think. And speaking of romances, I figure we might as well stay on the same theme. I also read The X Talk. So this follows Shay and Dominic, who work for the same radio station. The management of the radio station is going quite poorly. There's like cost cutting and they're trying to save money and stuff. Because Shay and Dominic have this kind of rivalry kind of chemistry, it is suggested that they pretend to be exes on the radio show to draw in viewers, and they can like chat about the experiences and get like relationship coaches in and stuff and take viewer calls and questions. And the whole like selling point is that they are boyfriend and girlfriend. I thought this one was a lot of fun. I absolutely blasted through it. It was such an easy read. This is the second book by this author that I've read, and I'm keen to read more by her, especially her adult books. Her YA one was all right, but this one was really, really fun. I thought Dominic was such a sweet love interest. Shay was kind of, I would say, like your standard awkward female main character. I thought Dominic was the real standout here because he was just so lovely, and there was a bit of snark, but it was like nice and kind snark, if that makes sense. And I also really enjoyed the kind of glimpse into the radio talk show world that we got, because I really enjoy learning about things like that. Towards the end as well, there's like the epic rom-com moment where the characters are essentially, this doesn't actually happen, but like the gist is like they're running towards each other and reuniting. I just thought that was lovely. That was so well done. So I would actually highly recommend this one. Just going through to quickly make sure I haven't read any more romances, and I didn't. The next closest thing I would like to talk about, which will be like a segue into my fantasy books that I read in February, is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I gave this one 2 stars, just to let you know. It is a super hyped book and series. It follows Emily Wilde, who is an English woman, and it's set in like the early 1900s, late 1800s, not entirely sure when. Emily is a professor and she is studying fairies, so she goes to this Norwegian island off the coast of the mainland. It's very isolated, and she wants to look into the fairy population there because they have different kinds of fairies to the ones in the UK. And she also has this rivalry with another guy whose name, I can't remember. I only remember Emily's name because of the title, and he follows her over there. She has always suspected that he might be Fae or part Fae, and so she's kind of always kept him at arm's length because he's keeping that to himself. Like, it's really sus that he's keeping that a secret, at least to her. And so there's like a bit of a crush there, but also mainly rivalry. So he follows her over, and then they start looking into the goings on in this village and the surrounding woodland. And I love that concept. I think it's so much fun, but this was just so boring. I just couldn't get into it. I didn't think really much happened. And this was also something that I thought or feared might happen, because it has similar vibes to A Natural History of Dragons, where someone's looking into dragons. Obviously this is the same thing, but Fae. And I found the dragon book boring, and I found this boring. I just didn't find it compelling at all. I thought the first 100 pages were quite good. I was quite invested, but as soon as the guy showed up, I thought things started to go downhill. And then the last 100 pages just, it was, yeah, I didn't like it. So I'm really disappointed. I won't be carrying on with the series, and I didn't like it enough to take notes, so I won't be recapping this one. And next, I would actually love to talk about a fantasy book that I did really enjoy, and that is Ash Princess. So this is an older YA fantasy book. It's the first in the series. This came out in 2018, so it's not like old, but it's older. So this follows Theo, who is the Ash Princess. So her mother, or her kingdom, was taken over by the Kaiser. Theo's mother's throat was slit in front of Theo. Most of her people were taken to the mines. Theo was then kept in the castle. The Kaiser took over the castle and raised his own family there and all of his court and stuff. So Theo was raised among all of these invaders, and she was punished regularly. She couldn't put a foot wrong, otherwise she would get whipped, and she would also get punished for other people committing crimes against the Kaiser, such as other rebels in the revolution and stuff. So she has grown up in the castle. She does have one friend, but to be honest, she's very, very isolated and alone. She also has 3 shadows. They're like kind of her guards who follow her everywhere to make sure she's not trying to escape or talking to anyone in her native language. And the reason I mention the rebels is that one day when Theo is a little bit older, she's a teenager now, the head of the rebellion is brought to her. He has been spending some time in the mines, as I said, and he is trying to kind of lead the revolution and rescue the princess. He is captured, he is brought to the throne room, and she is forced to kill him, which is obviously not what she wanted. And there are also theories that he might be her biological father. Her mother never told her, but she thinks it might be him. So that's just some added trauma there, that she is forced by the Kaiser to kill her own dad, and also perhaps the only hope she had of getting out of this place, because she was kind of counting on being rescued all of this time. I should probably also mention the fantasy element because it's kind of important. So in these mines, people are trying to get gems, and the magic is kind of infused in these gems. The mines are like the source of all magic, and the magic, as I said, goes into the gems. But sometimes if people spend way too long in the mines, they kind of go a bit crazy because the magic gets to them directly, and that is an important feature of this. There is a bit of a love triangle in this book, and I don't normally love those, but in this case I thought it was quite good. I thought Theo was a very interesting character to read about as well, because she has been so isolated. I feel like the author could have done a little bit more with her isolation and her sanity with that. But that's just a personal preference. I don't think anything about her character didn't make sense. And I really enjoyed seeing how hard Theo was trying to work to escape this palace, but on her own terms, and not just like be rescued or be killed. It was a lot more nuanced than that. I liked this so much. I read it in just 24 hours. I immediately ordered books 2 and 3 as well, because I know that I want to carry on with the series in March. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I am really sad that I slept on this one for so long, because I feel like it's a really underrated book, and I could have made all of my friends read it years ago, because I did actually, it's really embarrassing, receive a copy from NetGalley before my big NetGalley or big Booktube break. So I had my hands on this copy for years and I didn't pick it up, which is why I definitely need to be reading more from my shelves, because I'm sure I have 5 and 4 stars all over the place here that I just have not read, even though I've got every opportunity to. So yeah, really glad that I picked this one up. I think it's a really underrated book. I gave it 4 stars. Can't wait to carry on with the series. Another fantasy book that I read was Red Wolf by Rachel Vincent, who at one point in time was one of my auto-buy authors, but I don't think she really is now. Like, I still want to read her stuff, but not immediately. And in fact, I'm like quite a few books behind. Rachel Vincent became very popular back in the day with her Soul Screamers series, which is a YA paranormal romancy sort of book. She also wrote an urban fantasy series about werewolf shifters, which is how I discovered her. I found her books in the charity shop when I was about 14, and I feel like that's really kind of shaped my reading tastes and my love for urban fantasy. This one is kind of going back to her roots because it is about shifters in a way. It's a Red Riding Hood retelling. The main character is essentially Red Riding Hood, and it's set in fantasy France. It never explicitly says that, but the characters are speaking French, so I don't know where else. It could be maybe Canada. So the main character lives in a village that is surrounded by a dark wood, and this wood is really creepy and awful, creepy things live in there, including her grandmother, who is really lovely, lives in a clearing in the woods, but that does mean that the main character and her mother have to travel through the woods to get to her and deliver her food and stuff, because she's living out there all by herself. And then one day the main character has to go into woods on her own because her mother is really, really busy. And she finds out that she can turn into a wolf, and she is a wolf guardian of the forest. I'm not going to say too much else about the plot because I think there's not much going on. It's 400 pages, I think. Not even that, it's just over 300. And again, I read this in one evening because it was such an easy read. There's just not much to it, and so that's why I think I gave it 3 stars. Let me just double check. I should have checked this before. Yeah, 3 stars. So I liked it, but I'm not going to reread it. I'm going to give this book away, I think. And it's a bit of a shame because I have loved Rachel Vincent's books before, but I think she does much better with romancy books and also series as well, where you've got a bit longer with the characters, but this one just sort of abruptly ends, so it's not going to be a series. Another 3-star fantasy book that I read was the Baby Dragon Cafe. I just had to check the the title. This one, I don't really remember loads about it. It's from the beginning of the month, and because it's just a 3-star read, I just remember it being okay. So in this one, there is a main character who runs a coffee shop. It's very much a cozy fantasy with like Legends and Lattes vibes, but not as good. So the main character runs a coffee shop, and she meets a guy who is a dragon rider, and he's from a big deal dragon racing family. And he has a baby dragon who was meant to be his brother's, but his brother unfortunately died. So he is now looking after this dragon that he doesn't know what to do with, and he doesn't know he really wants to raise a dragon. So he asks the other main character to train the dragon for him, which is a bad idea because you're meant to be like bonding with your dragons and not just passing them off on someone else. But they sort of grow closer from that, and then there's like a little bit of a mystery action plot in there as well, but not really. There's not much plot to this one, but I think from what I can tell, this is going to be the first book in a companion series set in this like town with all the baby dragons, and I think this one was mainly introducing all of the different characters who are going to show up in the series later and probably have their own books. So this one was okay. I read it in just a few hours. It was entertaining, but it's not going to stick with me. It already isn't sticking with me, and I'm probably not going to carry on with the series realistically. I also read a couple of contemporary books, the first one being Turtle Moon. This one is middle grade, it's illustrated and it's absolutely lovely. I've read all of Hannah Gould's books so far and they are just wonderful. I love them. She focuses a lot on conservation and environmentalism, which I really appreciate. So this one is about a young girl whose father is offered a job in Costa Rica. Her parents are struggling to conceive and have been struggling for quite a while. So she, the main character, is an only child, and she's taken across the world to live in Costa Rica at a animal sanctuary. And she knows that her parents are going through a lot, but they won't talk to her about it. They are kind of getting on with their own thing. Their reasoning is that they don't want to obviously stress their daughter out, but she knows what's going on. So she is having a bit of a difficult time of it, but she really finds her place in this place in Costa Rica. As always, I really enjoyed this. I really liked the animal appearances. I liked the slight thrillery element of people trying to steal the turtle eggs. I enjoyed learning more about sea turtles and the animals in Costa Rica. The author said in the note at the end that she spent some time there when she was younger, and it was really nice for her to go back there via her book. And yeah, I could definitely feel that coming through the page. She loved that country and I really want to visit myself. So really enjoyed this one. I also read and enjoyed The Favourites. I've posted a whole review on this one, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I gave it 4.5 stars. This is about two ice skaters, ice dancers, who have known each other since they were teenagers, children. The blurb says that this is an epic love story, but that is not what this is. This is about the main character and her journey to the Olympics and what happened after that with the fallout and everything and all of this drama. I likened this a lot to Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't think this author really did such a good job as Taylor Jenkins Reid. It just doesn't have that 5-star feel, but it was a really good kind of addition to that very small subgenre and category. I really liked it. Go and watch my review if you would like to know more. I listened to a non-fiction book called Women's Law. I listened to this through Libro FM because I, along with many other people, am trying to use Amazon a lot less, and I do unfortunately have quite a few books still on Audible to listen to because I've used so many Amazon credits, so I haven't been able to uninstall the app yet because I'm not losing those books. But I signed up for Libro FM and will continue paying for an audiobook subscription through Libro FM. Instead of Amazon. So at least they're not getting my money, they're just getting my usage on the app. So I listened to Women's Law and I really enjoyed this one. This one talks about women in mythology, starting with Middle Eastern mythology, and it talks about Greek mythology and Roman mythology as well, and how everything's kind of interconnected. I would highly recommend listening to this one if you can as an audiobook because it's very well narrated, but if you don't do audiobooks or can't do audiobooks, then I'm sure the physical copy is just as good, and I want to get a copy for my shelf because this is a really interesting and great piece of feminist fiction. It's kind of talking about how women are often, throughout the myths, likened to demons in various ways, and it all comes back to the same mythology. It's just the same stuff over and over again through the centuries, and it's kind of depressing but also really well written. And a really interesting read. So I'd really like to get my hands on a physical copy of this one so that I can reference it, because it's a really good one to reference, and I think annotate and underline as well because I would like to look into it a bit further. I read a thriller called Famous Last Words. This is Gillian McAllister's new book and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. This one is about a woman whose husband becomes a hostage taker. he gets involved in his own hostage situation. She gets a call one day to say there's an incident and this guy is holding people at gunpoint and this guy is your husband. And so the first third of the book is this hostage situation, that day that it happened. And then I don't know if I can really tell you what happens to the husband after that, but I think I should, because it affects like the other 2/3 of the book. But basically he vanishes without a trace. And so the main character has to learn to deal with that, because she's also got a 9-month-old baby at this point, and her husband has done this thing and also just run off and hasn't provided her with any answers. She had no idea he was going to do this. This thing is looming over her. And then one day things kick off again in relation to her husband's hostage taking ways. I did think that parts of this were very convoluted. I know that this kind of thing, without spoiling it, does happen in real life, but it just seemed quite unrealistic to me because I'm not involved in any of that kind of stuff. I don't really know how else to talk about it without spoiling it. So I think we'll leave it at that. But nevertheless, I still really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really, really good. It's really well written. The thrilling elements were very thrilling. I read it so quickly I couldn't put the book down, and that's what you want from a thriller. I think Gillian McAllister is such a talented thriller writer because she does keep you reading on the edge of your seat, and she makes you feel for the thriller characters as well, which doesn't always happen. I think also she tends to come up with really interesting concepts as well. The book that I discovered her by was Wrong Place, Wrong Time, where the main character is going back in time by a day to figure out why her son killed someone. And that's another thing as well. I think Gillian McAllister writes family relationships and parent-child and spousal relationships really, really well. And I like that that's always the focus of her books, as far as I can tell, because I think it keeps the story grounded, even though there is kind of convoluted elements and things that seem a bit outrageous. It always comes back to this family. I think that's a really good way of writing a thriller. So I haven't read all of her work yet, but I do have a few more books by her lined up because she has been releasing books for quite a while. Before she had her breakout with Wrong Place, Wrong Time. So I'd like to read the rest of her backlist actually and see what else she can do. And then we're on to my sci-fi reading for the month. Let me just grab it. So the first book that I read is The Last Gifts of the Universe. This is an art copy that was given to me by my friend Justine, but I didn't like this one and I can barely remember it. So I gave it 2 stars because as I was reading, I was so bored. I think this was originally self-published and has been picked up. I have no idea what this book was about because it was just so boring. I promise I did read it, but how would I even describe this to you? So there is a person called Scout, and they are an archivist, and their job is to go through different worlds and kind of look for their last gifts. And these gifts can be multiple things or a multitude of things, but it tends to be like lost technologies and information on those worlds' cultures. And Scout is kind of preserving those things because those things may or may not be useful to Scout's home world. So Scout is going on this mission, going about their everyday job, and they come across a message from an alien race that is talking about the death of their world from thousands of years ago, and this message shouldn't really have survived, but it has. And so Scout starts looking into that, and that sounds all very intriguing, but it was really boring. And this is such a short book. I think the idea and the concept of this book was a lot bigger than what the author did here and what they tried to pull off. Unfortunately, I don't think the author did it very well, and I didn't like this book, so I gave it 2 stars. My favourite book of the month though was also sci-fi, and it's a book that I absolutely adored. I gave it 5 stars, and that is The Immortality Thief. I loved this book. I started tabbing it. I had a fantastic time. So I was reading this with a bunch of friends. Some friends had already read it before, and so I thought that it might be quite good because they recommended it and were rereading. So this is about a guy called Sean who is a linguist. He has a best friend called Benny, I think, and they've been arrested, and they are offered a deal. If they go to this abandoned, falling apart spaceship, salvage some data, the data is called the Philosopher's Stone, then they will be discharged essentially of all of their crimes. They don't need to worry. They don't know who their contractor is, but they know that he or they must be really high up in government, because not many people have the power to kind of let you go off free from murder, attempted murder, theft, all of that stuff. And also the whole thing is being like kept very quiet and under the table. So something dodgy is going on. Sean and Benny accept the deal and they go off to the spaceship with a bunch of crew members. I think there are 2 others. There's someone called Leah and someone called something else. I don't know. And then from that point on, it turns into a space horror and I absolutely loved it. So Sean and the crew get to the ship and then they are greeted by, or rather they arrive at the same time as these aliens called the ministers. My friends and I were talking and we imagined these ministers to be like towering blue creatures. Well, I thought blue, but I don't think the others did. Creatures, and actually they're like 5 foot, probably my height, not very tall at all, but their presence was just so intimidating to Sean and to us, the readers, that we imagined them to be like these giants who could just stomp on Sean. But that wasn't the case, and I think that's a testament to how good this author's writing is, because we all felt that same thing. And I don't think it's just a case of none of us being able to read descriptions properly. It's all about the vibe. Something that I really loved about this book was that Sean was a linguist, as I said. A big theme in this book is, you know, languages and even extinct languages, and Sean kind of bringing those languages back to life and being essential for doing that. But not only is he essential for reading and interpreting extinct languages, and he's one of the only ones who can do so, but also he becomes the bridge between two very different types of people, and that's because he's a linguist, and I just love that so much. I do kind of want to do a whole review on this book as well, so I don't want to go into too much detail here for fear of becoming repetitive, but I loved this book. Please read it if you haven't already. It ends on a cliffhanger, but the second book has come out now. It came out in February. Haven't read it yet because I'm scared to, but I do really want to soon, so maybe as soon as I turn the camera off I will pick up the second book, because this book is so wonderfully written. I love the characters so much. I love Sean. I don't normally love like the bumbling idiot in books because that's what Sean is, but he is just so lovely. I couldn't not love him, and I have ended up shipping him with an alien. It's all just fantastic. I loved it so much, so please pick this one up. It's another underrated one, I would say. And then my final 2 novels or written prose books were Rogue Protocol, which was a reread, and Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. These are books 3 and 4 in the Murderbot series. I can't show them to you because one of the books is downstairs and the other one, Saxon, my dog, ate, and I'm pretty annoyed with him. I'm waiting for a new copy to arrive, but I'm so annoyed. In fact, I can show you what he did because he deserves to be shamed. He is no longer a puppy, he is 18 months old, and he should not be doing this to my books. I don't even know why he did it. He wasn't bored, he wasn't stressed. He just ate half of my book, so I'm annoyed with him, but that's beside the point. I love these novellas. I think they're so much fun, and I think I've just reached the point where I'm about to start the full-length novel, if I remember correctly. So I've just finished the arc that is followed over these 4 novellas, and I love the arc. It's just fantastic. So I gave both books 4 stars. If you can listen to audiobooks, or if you want to, I would recommend listening to the audiobooks because the narrator for Murderbot is absolutely fantastic. He captures Murderbot's snark and side comments and thoughts really, really well and portrays them as though Murderbot is a real robot becoming more and more slowly human. So I'd highly recommend those. I won't go into too much detail about the series. Everyone knows what it's about. I've been talking for 40 minutes at this point, but essentially Murderbot is a rogue government bot who has kind of severed his governing module so that no one can control him anymore. I'm saying him, it's more it, but because Murderbot is becoming more and more human, I'm going to start saying him, I think. And also Alexander Skarsgård is playing Murderbot in the TV series that's coming out, I think, in May. So him just feels more natural. So this is a really good series, and I'm really glad that I'm catching up in time for the TV show to come out. I don't know if I'll be all caught up by then, but at least I finished this first arc, and I think that's probably what the TV show is going to cover, I assume, at least for the most part. So I'm going to slowly work my way through the rest of the series in March and April, in time for the show to come out, I think. Okay, and then I'm just double checking, but I think that's all of my novels, and then we can go on to the graphic novels that I read, and I won't go into too much detail about these because there's a lot of them. So one of the ones that I picked up from the library was Mooncakes. I've had my eye on this one for quite a while. This is about a granddaughter of 2 witches and her childhood friend who is a werewolf, and her childhood friend comes back to town and there are goings on in this town that they have to solve. There's a whole like mystery there. This is a standalone as far as I can tell, and I think it should be a series. It's such a good book. I really enjoyed the art style as well. I'm quite picky about art and illustrations in graphic novels and what I do and don't enjoy. But what I really liked about this one was the sort of colour palette of it, and I also really liked that all of the characters look very different, because you don't always get that in graphic novels, and I'll talk about that again in a second. But I really enjoyed this, and it felt kind of cozy, which is what you want, I think, from a witchy sort of book. It was somewhat creepy in places. I really enjoyed their relationship. I can't remember their names, to be honest. I also really enjoyed the representation. So she is deaf, and this character is non-binary. And there's also a load of black cats, which also helped. So really enjoyed this one, gave it 4 stars. Another one that I really enjoyed was The Firelight Apprentice by Bree Paulson, who also wrote Garlic and the Witch and Garlic and the Vampire, which I also read this month. I gave all of them 4 stars. This one in particular is a standalone, and it's about 2 sisters whose father was injured in a magician war. So he is struggling, they're helping him in his shop. The younger sister, she has magical abilities, so she gets sent off to become an apprentice, and then there's sort of like a mystery and some goings on there. Things start to get a bit weird for the older sister, and she doesn't trust that the people who have her sister are looking after her properly. I really liked this one. I liked the family relationships between the 2 sisters and with the father as well, and the sort of found family sort of vibe that it had going on. And there's this one panel that is so creepy. I can't show it to you because it's a spoiler, I think. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Really creepy, and I loved it. It was so good, and I would highly recommend picking this one up. I would also recommend picking up Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch, the Garlic duology, but those are more middle grade, and I would say this one here is more YA. So the Garlic ones are about a garlic bulb who has grown up in her garden with her vegetable friends, and in the first book a vampire's house has become inhabited again, so she has to go and confront this vampire, and she has to be brave, and it kind of goes on from there. They're really cozy and sweet. I would say more character focused, whereas The Firelight Apprentice is more plot focused, with some family relationships as well, of course. The other one that I read was The Montague Twins. This one I gave, I think, 3 stars. This is about 2 brothers stumble across a witchy, ghosty situation, and they're in this town, they have to uncover stuff. So this is actually a little bit similar to Mooncakes, but less kind of diverse and also heartwarming. This has more of an older, less cozy feel to it. There are some creepy moments in this. I was going into it thinking that it might be a bit like Supernatural, TV show, I mean. And it was a bit, but it wasn't very engaging, so I probably won't carry on with this series unless I can find them in the library, but I don't think they're published here. So this is just going to be the end of the road for me. If anyone understood that Supernatural pun, we should be friends. I also read The Old Guard, Volume 1. This is what the film is based on, or they were released around the same time. And I really enjoyed the film, which is why I picked this one up. I struggled with this artwork. It was all very blue and pink and purple focused, and all of the characters look the same. This isn't the one that really annoyed me in that regard, but the characters did all look very similar, and it took me a while to get into the book because of that. I had trouble. But this is about a bunch of people who basically can't die, or if they do die, it takes them ages to do so. They are immortal up to a point, and they are called the Old Guard. And in this one, they are tricked into doing a mission that they really didn't want to do. I enjoyed it. It was action-packed, but like I said, it did take a while to get into, and I kind of only really got into it because I already knew what happened in the film. So I wasn't as confused as I think I probably would be for perhaps the first 40 or so pages, but I did end up enjoying it, and I would like to carry on with this. I also read Lore Olympus. This is volume 7, so I'm up to date. And this is the one with the courtroom, and I'd actually already read this volume online because I got a little bit ahead of the publication hardback copies because I was reading it for free online, and then the webcomics site made it really difficult to do so. I am now just waiting for each hardback release before I carry on. I love this story. I love Hades and Persephone. I love all the gods. It's amusing, it's awkward, it's entertaining, and I would highly recommend it. So I read volume 7. I also read On a Sunbeam. This was the last book that I read in February, and I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 2 stars. This was the book where all of the characters look exactly the same, apart from changes in skin or hair colour. I got so confused by who was who and what was going on. There were flashbacks that weren't very clear. The illustrator / author did try to make it clear that the bluer scenes were the flashbacks. To be honest, it didn't really work because all the characters again look the same, so I couldn't tell if the main character went to school with these same people who were in the present day scenes or what was going on. So I didn't love this. It's about a main character who starts a new job with a crew who are either restoring or knocking down old buildings or architectures to turn them into something else, or to, as I said, restore them into what they once were. Throughout the course of the book, you sort of learn about the main character's backstory and how she was treated in school and her relationship with someone when she was in boarding school as well. And I thought it had a good concept. and I thought the characters could have been very complex, but to be honest I just didn't care. So yeah, I didn't love this one. I'm really disappointed by it, and I'm glad that I didn't buy it because it's really expensive. I got it from the library, thankfully. I also started another graphic novel series called Descender, and I love this one. This is another sci-fi one. It's about a boy who's a robot. Before he went into like robo sleep, there was a whole thing with the other robots and people turned against them because robots were now seen as dangerous. And so this boy wakes up and people get the alert that he wakes up and then like, we need to go and kill this robot because he's dangerous. And that's kind of like the gist of it. It's a lot more complex than that, and I would really like to carry on with this series. This was a really good one. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read The Nice House on the Lake, which is by the author of Something is Killing the Children, which I absolutely adore. But this one's disappointing. I only gave this one 3 stars because it was weird. And I think the issues have been condensed into or compounded into 2 volumes. So I've read the first volume and I need to read the second, but I'm a bit hesitant to do so because I didn't love the first one. It was really confusing and really weird. So in this one, it's kind of like the end of the world. The characters are gathered by their friend who turns out to be an alien of some sort. They're taken to this nice house on the lake and they're asked to do like puzzles and tasks and stuff, I think. It's a bit confusing about if they're actually being asked to do it or if they need to do it in the first place. It's not really very clear. And again, this is another one where a lot of the characters look the same and I really struggled to keep their backstories straight in my head. It might be because I read the whole volume rather than the separate issues, so I didn't have much time to like separate them or know when one issue was ending and the other one was starting. Because I think each character did get their own issue. It's just not the way that I read it. So maybe it's better to read this one as single issues rather than one volume, because otherwise it does all become a bit of a blur. So I'm going to carry on with the series. The concept was very interesting. It's just, I'm so confused. And then finally, the last book that I read, well, it wasn't the last one that I read, but it's the last graphic novel that I want to talk about, and that is Persepolis. And this is technically 2 in 1, but I'm counting it as 1 book. It tells the story of the main character growing up in Iran in the 80s, so around the time of the revolution, when women and girls were told to start wearing a type of headscarf. So it's a graphic memoir, and the author talks about her time in Iran and then about the time that she left to go to Europe, and then about her time coming home. And I thought this was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it's really an all-time favourite for me, so I didn't really want to give it 5, but it's definitely a solid book. The translator did a really good job, I thought, as well. There are a couple of like awkward sentences and dialogue from the translation, but I didn't mind too much. I was really invested in the memoir side of things and the history and what the author had actually gone through. Really, really interesting. I didn't actually know much about Iranian history before reading this, so this is a really good one to get you started, I think. And I do actually have a few fiction books set in Iran on my shelf, so I think this is a really good sort of base for me to, or foundation for me to start with before getting into those, so that I know what an actual person went through before reading the fictionalized versions. So really enjoyed that in a way. I gave it 4 stars. And those are all the books that I read in February. I've been talking forever, my battery is about to die, so I would like to thank you for watching. I will tell you now that I only read 25 books in February. I didn't quite reach 28. I was going to read some more graphic novels, but then I started watching some TV shows and stuff, and as I said, in the middle of the month I went through some stuff, so I didn't quite get to them, but 25 books is still pretty epic, so I'm really pleased with how that went. Let me know what your favourite books in February were in the comments below, and thank you for watching. I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.